want to get to some community questions. Folks found out that you were going to be on the show. Excited. A lot of people, follow your work in this community, as you know. So I have 4 questions for you here. So the first one comes to us from Zach over at Box Alarm Trading. He said, what is your favorite UFC related piece that you've made to date?
Favorite UFC? You know what? I think it's tied up. I think it's the Izzy one, just because. First of all, that year, which is I guess a year and a half ago, was the first time I'd really been experimenting with collage and paint pours. So um, that's kind of the new techniques that I've been delving into over the past couple of years, which is basically I make multiple paintings, um, and I can and then I cut them out and put them together. And what that allows me to do is get a little bit wilder with the application of the paint
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not worried about affecting the other pieces.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Like that was so with that one, that was all, pretty much maybe like the second or third piece that I was doing that way, where I do a painting of Izzy, I can get crazy, and then I cut it out, and then I do a painting of this guy, and then I do crazy paint pours. I do like 20 paint pours, and then I find the paint pour that has the coolest energy that fits together with this, and then when I put it together, the juxtapositions are crazy. So that was the first, and so that's one reason. The second reason is it was the subject matter, Izzy
Yeah, of course.
and like I said, Izzy and I had been IG friends for a while, and then so yeah, and then the third reason I guess is because we got to gift to him in person, and yeah, I mean, so I like how it came out. I like the composition. I like for me the paint pours and the collaging was very fresh at the time, and then we got to meet Izzy, and it was dope.
Second question comes to us from Jay Money over at UFC Card Fiend, and he wants to know, how do you go about pricing such a commission as the UFC 300 mural? Is it a budget that the UFC presents, or is it a price that you send over? And of course, you don't got to go into the numbers, just like overall high level. How does that work from a business perspective?
Man, it's hard, dude. So it's luckily my secret weapon is my wife, who's still in advertising and she's a producer.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't work with too many illustrators, but always a lot of photographers, directors, and she's in the advertising game. So she's a little bit more familiar with budgets than a normal person. I mean, I would say a lot more familiar. So
Yeah, I would say
um,
so too.
it's always tricky. We always break it down. Obviously we're trying to get what we can get. Um,
Of course.
um, a lot of times it's what the usage is. Is it just going to be a graphic or like an editorial thing? Like when I was doing the Vice stuff, you
Mm-hmm.
know, first of all, I was starting out and um, so money wasn't really an issue, but um, because I still had a job. But you know what it is? It's like for an online, it's an illustration for an online article that's going to be up on a website for like a couple days. So
Yeah.
like you can kind of infer like what the budget would be for that because they got to go. And then or is it for like apparel where you know
Mm-hmm.
it's for a global apparel company like so it's kind of like the different industries kind of have I guess as I've worked in the different industries, you kind of figure out what the standard is, sort of.
Yeah.
But it's always kind of like a crapshoot, Like one kind of example is when I actually got hired by an ad agency to do paintings for Game of Thrones
Mm-hmm.
uh, for its final season, right? So like that was very tricky to pitch because on one hand you're like, oh, Game of Thrones is the biggest thing now, the biggest thing that's happening, and it's going to be advertising for the last season. So it's like, oh, we got, we're going to crank it up, we're going to ask for this and that. But then,
On the
what?
opposite end.
It's not the main image that's going to be in Times Square. They wanted these paintings for an activation that um, is kind of like a side advertising, or they had a massive advertising plan. Obviously, they had
Mm-hmm.
like crazy social media things and everything. But so then you balance that, and then the other thing is, when somebody that big is reaching out to you, they also reached out to like three other illustrators
Yeah,
or
you're
artists.
competing, so
Yeah,
you're competing. Yeah,
yeah. So you pretty much have to tell them what you're willing to do it for, and then sometimes they won't get back to you. So it's like you're kind of balancing all these things. You're
yeah.
like, oh, this is my shot. You can't just be like, oh, I want this, and they're like, oh, that's too high. And then, okay, can we do this? It's like they might not even get back to you.
It's not a Shark Tank where you're gonna,
No,
yeah, exactly. So
no,
you said the word pitch is what came to mind. It sounds like you
yeah,
have to pitch yourself, and you have to be mindful knowing that you have competition, that you
yeah.
don't go too high because they might just not get back to you via email.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
but luckily, by the time I got to the UFC, I've had 7 or 8 years of experience of doing a bunch of different things, and we got it to work. I
Yeah,
guess
yeah.
we got
Got it.
something that we were both happy with, I think.
So
So,
if any artists listen to this and you're not sure about what to price, just reach out to his wife, and she'll
yeah,
help you out. She'll
no, man,
consult you
and you
on
know
that.
what? A lot of times it also depends on like how cool the project is and like how busy I am or like how many, um, yeah, being an artist is it's like everything is, and then not to mention the gallery world. Like I've been a commercial artist for 8 years, but I've only been in the gallery world for like about 3 years.
Mhm.
Just kind of during COVID, a gallery hit me up, and so now I actually have my third solo show coming up next month. But that pricing is totally different. It's like that, because that's an audience for that's a totally different audience. It's not like art directors and big brands. It's like people who are want to get your stuff and they're going to put it in their home or
In
they're
their home.
collecting stuff. So doing that was almost like not starting over, but kind of like you have to start at a certain point, for
Yeah,
paintings because it's a different thing. So I think with art, there's like really no one way. There's no
yeah.
like real guide. Like they do have industry illustrator like guidebooks,
Okay.
but it's really it's hard. It's hard when you're in an industry when that so many people want to do the job that you're doing. Anything like sports or like UFC,
Yeah.
like people complain about fighter pain stuff, but it's hard to fight against that because there's so many people who just want to fight, who want to do it.
Right.
So it's like being an artist. Like
There's
there's
that
always
next
like a
guy that's
younger,
willing to do it for free, or
yeah, yeah,
basically, exactly. Yeah.
yeah. Like there's another kid that also has a real job, but he's just doing it on the side and he just wants to get exposure. So
Hmm.
it's always, so there's always
That
something.
balance. Yeah, that balance. And honestly, when you started going into that insight, I love your answer to that, because the complexity to price UFC 300, where what it means to their
Yeah,
sport and what they are, that it's a piece that could really have legs to it and run for a while, and they can use it in multiple ways. I never even thought like you might also in the details of your contract say like, it can't be used for apparel, or it can, and this is how it can be used, or it can't, right? Like that there's so much of that goes into it, that I bet even with your wife's help, it wasn't an easy one to price.
no, because you're like, oh, we're doing, a big mural for the UFC, and like, this is the biggest, so we got it. But then you're like,
Yeah.
but then the other part of my brain is like, I have to do this no matter what. If I'm not
Correct.
of 300 and they go to someone else, I'm gonna hate myself. So it's like
Hmm.
it's like the angel and the devil. So
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, but it's such a big thing to have on your resume. So I hope you got what, obviously you're happy with and above that. But even if you knew that it was more a long-term play, hey, like that's also something that I think most folks have to know when to play that card, when it's
yeah,
such a big name like that. I mean, you take that opportunity, and then in perpetuity you make back,
yeah, yeah,
from it.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
all right, third question comes over from Luke at the MMA Love podcast. He says, "Are there strict guidelines or rules to abide by when working with a corporation like the UFC? And what department at the UFC is the one reaching out, or is it Dana White emailing you?"
No, no, it's not in a way. And like, I feel like the number one question that people ask me was like, did Dana come by when you were doing the mural? And he didn't. And every day they were like, Dana's gonna come. That's we showed him the thing. He loves it. He's gonna come by today. And we're like, oh, cool. And then every
And it
day,
never did.
yeah,
So
he just.
busy.
I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
I'm in the warehouse.
Just come to the warehouse. Come on,
Yeah,
I'm here.
out a little bit longer at the cafe, being like, oh, where's it? But it was cool. Uh, so the question was, who reached out? Oh, wait,
Yeah,
sorry, what was it?
guidelines. Yeah, strict guidelines to abide by from the UFC, and also who reaches out in a situation like this. What team is that?
So I guess the second question is easier. Uh, the people that reached out to me for this one was specifically the production team for the countdown, which
Okay.
is it's all in house, which is so amazing. UFC is such an amazing company because they they really run a tight ship. Like everything is in their house. Like they control their apparel and the graphics. They have their own, like the promotion, like the countdown, the
Yep.
embedded, and it's all like a tight crew.
Hmm.
So they're like, and I think that's just like the way to do it with something like this, where cards are happening every week, and there's fighters in and out, people are dropping out. It's like I couldn't imagine if you were like a more traditional company, like the
Changing
brand I'm working
crews.
like
Right.
like yeah, you have like an external advertising agency, they have an external videographer and
Mm.
directors that they're hiring and stuff like that. I feel like that, so in one way it's very efficient at the UFC. Rules, I don't think there's any specific rules with the UFC. I think just rules in general of being a freelance artist. Probably the most important thing is like just being professional, like being on time and stuff like that. Especially with the UFC, it's like um, you want to keep them in the loop, and I mean that's just kind of like basic.
Basic things. Yeah. Communicate well. Be on time.
Yeah, being a professional guy.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, um, yeah, yeah,
Okay, no, that helps. That helps.
yeah.
I know we're running long, so I want to be mindful of your time. One more question. Joe over at Joe's Card Stash, his question is, what has your experience been like working on with a trading cards company like Topps? Because we also have that drop that just happened. There's 300 of those out there. I'm still waiting to get my hands on one, but yeah, let us know.
Well, I actually there's no story there because I don't work with them. It's basically that I think they have a deal with the UFC where the
Correct.
artist series posters or the artwork that I make for the artist series posters get made into Topps cards. So I actually
It's a
don't
collateral
have
piece of your
contact.
deal. Is that the way it works
Yeah,
basically?
yeah.
Okay.
It's always like a buyout. So when we do the artwork for the UFC, they use it for apparel. I guess they use it for cards, um, stuff like that. So yeah, unfortunately,
Interesting.
I don't have a cool like trading card story.
But that's insightful though, just for folks that want to know, because we wouldn't have otherwise known that. We would have thought Tops is like emailing you and wanting to get a few ideas off of the work that you did, and but it's a little bit more simple than that. So all right, thank you to the community for asking those. Thank you for answering those.